Hi everyone, William here with the Grand Duke Dmitri 1917 diary entry, and the previous video was the 6th of September. Now we're jumping forward to the 23rd of September. Dmitri's really been bouncing around in book 5, so we started out with a long diary entry of the 16th of September. Then we went back in time to the 6th for a daily entry describing just one day. Now we're going forward to the 23rd with another long entry and a very serious one, a very worried one, quite appropriately. So for some reason, the video for the 6th of September just received only a handful of views. I have no idea why. I was, definitely disappointed, so I was kind of too discouraged to do another video yesterday, but of course the show must go on, as they say. So hopefully this one will be of more interest. It certainly is far more serious. And today, just for fun, I came across this the other day. It's a reproduction icon, really just on a piece of glossy paper, of Dmitri's patron saint, Saint Dmitri of Rostov. Interesting because he was a Cossack and Ukrainian, and his feast day fell very close to the day of Dmitri's birth, which is why I think this particular saint was chosen, and Dmitri was named after him. Okay, here we go. 23rd September 1917, Saturday, Gulhek, English Mission, Persia. I have nothing positive to mention this week. You read the newspapers and your soul just groans with horror. Will Russia truly perish? Is there truly among the Russian people not a single person who can do something to save Russia? Apparently, everyone screams that the motherland is in danger, that the motherland is on the verge of ruin, that the revolution and freedom are dying, but no one thinks about Russia, about her salvation. It is very typical that just now in the press, articles appear openly and speeches are given directed toward a justification of General Kornilov. General Alexeyev, departing from the post of Chief of Staff of the Supreme Commander, Kerensky, bluntly stated that he considers Kornilov an honorable and devoted man who embarked on an open uprising against the government not as a counter-revolutionary, but as a patriot who could not go along with anarchy or the collapse of the army at such a critical moment. That is to say, Alexeyev looks upon the Kornilov uprising exactly as I do, as I wrote in previous pages. He even goes further than me. He states that he considers the military revolutionary trial of Kornilov the greatest injustice and proof of bias on Kerensky's part. It is readily understandable that the Soviet of Soldiers and Workers' Deputies would scream at the top of their lungs that Kornilov should be imprisoned and sentenced to death. Thinking not long ago about all these horrors and abnormalities that are now unfolding in Rus, I was struck by an image from life. We, thanks to freedom, equality, and brotherhood, have sunk to the position of uncivilized lands like China or Persia. After all, if you look impartially on the Kornilov epic, then you get the following picture. During the war, the Supreme Commander rises up against the government and even sends troops to occupy the capital, and the ambassadors of the Allied powers advise the government to enter into negotiations with the rebellious general. After all, it is truly impossible to believe that such a thing could occur in a great nation in the 20th century. But the whole problem lies in the fact that we have no center of power. We don't even have multiple centers of power, just a bunch of people who, under the banner of love for the dying motherland, conduct all kinds of experiments on her. So, opposed to these experiments, Kornilov rose up, whose soul blank, firm authority to extricate the country from the situation that had been created. Now, in the newspapers, there is taking place a frightful polemic about the coalition cabinet. Apparently, Kerensky wants to attract to the government representatives of the propertied classes and the hated bourgeoisie, and so the leftist elements are howling, finding that there is no place at all in the government for the cadets who were compromised by the Kornilov affair, and it is very clear that a coalition on the basis of trust is alone capable of beginning to awaken the sleeping patriots. With only speeches and unfriendly shouts, one cannot force the bourgeoisie and capitalists to meet halfway the social utopia that all the extremist elements preach. They even now write that there is no place for Kerensky in the new cabinet because he is inclined to unite cadets and socialists in his government. We will see how all of this ends. Okay, that's quite a lot. Maybe I shouldn't have done so much because there's definitely a lot to talk about, but let's go right to it. So we're talking, of course, about the Kornilov uprising. Dmitri did indeed, as he mentions, write quite a lot previously about that in his diary entry of the 16th of September. The video I did on that text was quite popular, and indeed it was a fascinating moment in Russian history. All right, so we go then to, apparently, all of these newspaper articles and speeches, people saying Russia is in danger, Russia is in danger, but part of the reason they're upset is because they feel that the revolution and freedom are dying. So Dmitri contrasts that with anyone thinking about Russia's salvation. So that's kind of an interesting juxtaposition that he puts there, putting those things in opposition. And again, the idea of the man of action, I would say he's kind of typically Russian in that respect. He wants a person who is heroic and strong, in charge of things, as the one who will indeed bring salvation to Russia. So he brings up Alexeyev, an interesting figure. So Alexeyev, when Nicholas II took over at headquarters in 1915, Alexeyev became his chief of staff, and really the person who was doing the strategizing and that sort of thing, as I understand it. He was a General Staff graduate, General Staff Academy graduate. He was one of those who participated in the push to get Nicholas to abdicate. And then under the provisional government, he became I believe, the supreme commander, yes, but briefly from March to May. Then Kornilov became the supreme commander. And as Dmitri mentions, Alexeyev became the chief of staff under Kornilov. So not surprisingly, Alexeyev is pro-Kornilov. As Dmitri says, he looks upon the Kornilov uprising exactly as I do. And he doesn't think that Kornilov should be put on trial. Incidentally, Kornilov was not executed. He died I think his train was hit by some kind of explosive. I previously said that he killed himself, but that was General Kaledin, the Cossack, the ataman of the Don host, who had killed himself. So many of these men, when I looked them up, including Alexeyev, died in 1918, 1919, and Alexeyev was the rare one who died of natural causes. He had a heart attack. Okay, so then Dmitri refers to Rus, R-U-S, and in Russian it has something called a soft sign that's not pronounced. So Rus is a political choice, or a cultural choice, you could say, because Rus is what Russia was called until under Peter the Great it became Rossiya, and Rossiya is the name of the Russian Empire. Rus was the name of the pre-Russian Empire Muscovite state with, much different mindset until Peter the Great came along and made Russia imperial. So that's very interesting that Dmitri chooses at that moment to use Rus. He was not a traditionalist. But in this instance, for whatever reason, he chooses to use that word. Then he refers to the famous motto that came out of the French Revolution: liberté, fraternité, égalité. So yes, freedom, brotherhood, and equality. And he is not presenting that in a positive way. He's saying that because of this idea of freedom, brotherhood, and equality, we have sunk to the position of uncivilized lands like China or Persia. Okay, that's putting it bluntly. I don't think if you took those things individually, certainly the Young Russia Party that he was a big part of believed in freedom, equality, and brotherhood, at least ostensibly. That's what in his speeches he was talking about. Even equality, the end of social classes and equality. But in this instance, he equates it with having caused Russia to regress, to be a struggling state like China or Persia, where there's constant chaos, is what I think he means by that. He's incredulous that such a thing as an attempt at a military coup and, the Kornilov incident could occur in the 20th century. Well, I have news for him. It's still occurring in the 21st century, right? Doesn't seem like such a primitive thing, but indeed it must have been a huge shock. Russia was at least considered a stable state. Nobody was, people were predicting this. I won't say that. But, even Dmitri was worried about something like this happening. But he, just thinks, and everybody in the world just thinks this is so shocking, even if they somewhat had seen the writing on the wall. So, China was kind of his go-to country, too, whenever he was talking about a country that was truly primitive. And he'll continue to do that. He refers to China. Persia, I think, just because he was there and he saw that things were far from stable. There would be a revolution there in 1921. Okay, the whole thing kind of speaks for itself, but it's important to bring up the subject of the cadets, because Dmitri would end up being somewhat aligned with the cadets. There were two parties in Russia that were more or less centrist parties. One was the cadets, which had nothing to do with the military. It's just the nickname for the constitutional Democrats. And the other was the Octoberists, who took their name from the October 1905 revolution, when the Duma was created. So the cadets were center-left, the Octoberists were center-right. Neither party believed in any kind of extremism. So, here you have Kerensky, and he really has his back against the wall. He's trying to hold the middle ground between the reactionary monarchists and the Bolsheviks. That was a hopeless task, but he did his best, I guess. And so you had, apparently, before, the cadets had not been allowed. I thought they were allowed, but in a coalition. So Kerensky wanted to give the cadets a role in the government and in this ruling coalition. And the leftists, the Bolsheviks, the extremists, did not want that. They were in favor of, as Dmitri puts it, a social utopia. Well, actually, they were quite cynical if you're talking about Lenin, but, they put forth this program that some of them, people like John Reed, really believed would usher in social, utopia, the workers' utopia. So, Dmitri, as always, is one of the centrists. He's not an extremist at all. As I say, the whole thing kind of speaks for itself. I will just add that Pavel Milyukov was the head and one of the founders of the Constitutional Democrat Party, and Dmitri would go straight to Milyukov in 1919 in England to be a sort of mentor to him, so that he could really understand what had happened in Russia and the way things would develop in the future. Now, Milyukov didn't really want to play that role, so he kind of told Dmitri, well, here's some books you should read, and here's some advice, but that was about it. Anyway, what do we have next time? Well, we have more of this from the same diary entry, and Dmitri citing an English language article. Was it English language, or did I translate it? Actually, I translated it, by a man who identified himself only as Igla, I-G-L-A, capital letters, and, never explained what that stood for. And so Dmitri's going to talk about him and what he has to say about what's going on in Russia. Like everybody, especially people abroad, Dmitri was really trying to figure out what's going on and what's going to happen next. So I hope to see you then. Bye.